My DIL said, "You do nothing. Watch my 3 kids while I travel." She didn't ask, she ordered. I smiled and hung up. When she returned, she froze at what she saw. She never thought I'd fight back. That was the sentence that cracked something inside me long before anything else did. The text came in at 9:15 on a gray Portland morning, lighting up my phone with the kind of brightness that feels like mockery. "You do nothing now. Watch my 3 kids while I travel. I will drop them off at 7. No hello. No question. No acknowledgement that I was a human being with a life of my own. Just another command tossed in my direction, as if 62 years of surviving, working, raising her husband alone after tragedy had made me someone disposable. My name is Willa Hartley. I am 62. For years, Brooke had spoken to me like that, sweet in public, slicing in private. I used to swallow it. The way women of my generation were taught to swallow the things that cut us. But retirement had given me a silence she mistook for emptiness. She thought stepping away from my job meant I had stepped away from myself. The phone rang a few minutes after the text. Her name flashed across the screen. Insistent. Like she expected an immediate answer. "Willa," she said without even breathing in. "I assume you got my message. I need a break. They're impossible lately. And since you do nothing anymore, you can manage them." I lifted the phone from my ear and looked at it for a moment, as if it were the first time I truly understood what she thought of me. Then I brought it back and said quietly, "All right, Brooke." She kept talking instructions, demands, warnings, but I no longer felt the need to obey. I pressed the red button, feeling a calmness I hadn't known in years. It was the smallest sound, that click, but it echoed. For the first time in years, I did not feel powerless. I felt awake. And by the time Brooke dropped those children at my door the next morning, I already knew something had shifted inside me. Inside this family. Inside the story that was finally beginning. I didn't answer Brooke right away after I hung up. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the quiet space that had held every version of me: wife, mother, widow, worker, survivor. Somehow, all of that had shrunk in her eyes into one small sentence: "You do nothing." But I hadn't always been someone people spoke to like that. I was 28 when my husband, Mark, died in a construction accident. One phone call shattered the life we were still building. And suddenly, I was raising a 4-year-old boy alone in a city that didn't pause for anyone's grief. I worked 2 jobs, day shifts at a clinic. Night shifts, stocking shelves because my son, Daniel, needed shoes, lunches, books, a future. I never let him see how tired I was. Years later, when he brought Brooke home for the first time, she shook my hand with both of hers. "Willa, I've heard so much about you," she said, smiling like she meant it. But her eyes slid past my worn sweater, my plain shoes, the house I kept as best I could. I felt the distance begin, then polite, pretty, soft around the edges. But real. It grew in small ways. At birthday dinners, she'd comment lightly to Daniel, "Your mom insists on doing things the old way," while praising her own contributions. At Christmas, she'd laugh lightly. "That's adorable. Willa, we already bought the kids better ones, but thank you." Always sweet. Always thinly coated. Daniel didn't notice. He was proud, busy, grateful to see his wife and mother getting along or pretending to, and I pretended too. Because mothers do that, we bend. We stay quiet. We try not to disturb the peace our children build. I didn't realize how much I'd bent until the morning Brooke's text snapped me clean in half. The version of me she returned to wouldn't be the one she expected. Brooke arrived the next morning at exactly 7. Like she'd scheduled a delivery. She didn't step inside. She didn't even make eye contact. "Evan, Lila, Noah, go," she said, pointing toward my doorway as if I were a waiting receptacle and not their grandmother. The children dragged their suitcases past her legs. Evan, 12, didn't look up from his phone. Lila, 10, had her arms crossed tight across her chest. Noah, 7, stood behind them like a shadow trying not to exist. Brooke leaned in, her tone sharp but smiling. Try not to confuse them with your old-fashioned ideas. Willa, Claudia prefers things done a certain way, and I need to keep the house calm. Then she walked away. The door closed, leaving me with 3 small strangers who carried their mother's voice without even knowing it. Evan brushed past me first. "Where's the Wi-Fi?" he muttered. "In the kitchen." But he didn't wait for the rest. Lila wrinkled her nose. "Mom said your house smells weird, like old stuff." She glanced around. "Do you even clean?" "I clean every day," I said gently. She shrugged. "Mom says people who don't work anymore get lazy." My chest tightened, but I kept my tone steady. "Well, you'll see how things work here." Noah lingered, clutching the strap of his backpack. He didn't speak until the others were out of sight. "Are you gonna yell?" he whispered. I knelt so we were eye level. "No, sweetheart, I don't yell. Mom says you yell all the time." "I don't," I said softly. He looked confused, like 2 worlds had suddenly contradicted themselves, and he didn't know which one he was allowed to believe. In the living room, Evan slammed his suitcase onto the floor. "This place is tiny," he said. "Mom says it's embarrassing she had to bring us here," Lila chimed in. "She said you don't know how to handle kids." I stood in the doorway, letting their words settle. They weren't trying to hurt me. They were repeating what had been planted in them. That was the moment I understood before I could teach these children anything. I had to unteach what they'd been taught. And the real work was only beginning. By mid-morning, the house felt like it had been claimed by 3 small storms. Evan sprawled on the couch with his phone. Lila stomped from room to room, inspecting everything she could criticize, and Noah hovered near the doorway, like he was ready to bolt. I clapped my hands lightly. "All right. Breakfast." "We already ate," Evan said without looking up. "No, you didn't," Lila added. "Mom said you cook weird stuff." "I made pancakes," I replied. "Animal shapes." Noah's head lifted first. "Animal shapes." Evan scoffed. "We're not babies." I set the plates on the table anyway, determined to keep a sense of normalcy and maybe spark a little curiosity. "You don't have to eat, but the phones stay here until after breakfast." Evan's jaw tightened. "That's not fair. It's the rule in my house." "That's dumb," Lila snapped. "Maybe, but it's still the rule." They resisted. Of course, groaning, eye-rolling, dramatic sighs. But slowly, almost suspiciously, they came to the table. Noah sat first. Fingers brushing the pancake shaped like a bear, Lila poked hers. "This looks okay, I guess," Evan muttered. "It's fine," like the words pained him. After breakfast, I handed out small tasks. "Evan, you rinse the dishes. Lila, you wipe the table. Noah, you gather the napkins." "We're not doing chores," Evan said. "You are while you're here," Lila huffed. "Mom says chores are a waste of time." "No," I answered quietly. "Chores teach us to take care of what takes care of us." They moved slowly at first, expecting me to snap or scold. I didn't. I worked beside them, washing the pans, humming a tune Mark used to hum on Saturday mornings. When we finished, Noah leaned against my arm just a touch, so light he probably didn't realize he'd done it. That small weight told me more than any words. Something was shifting. Not much, but enough to keep going. It was mid-afternoon, and the 3 of them had sprawled across the living room floor. arguing over a puzzle that wasn't really a puzzle. It was just a distraction. Evan glanced at me. Voice low. Mom said you're useless, that we're lucky she even leaves us here. I kept folding laundry. I'm listening. Lila rolled her eyes. She leaves us a lot, like weeks sometimes. She says it's for work, but we don't even know where she goes. Noah peeked from behind the sofa. And Chris. He comes when Dad's at work. Mom says he helps. But he's always around when she wants control, and we don't know why. I froze just slightly. Chris, they're always whispering, Lila said, glancing down at her hands. Dad doesn't know. Evan kicked a puzzle piece across the floor. Sometimes she yells, like really yells, and I don't know if she even cares if we hear her. I didn't move. I let it settle. Not abuse, not criminal, but weighty enough to leave marks if ignored. Noah shuffled closer. She says Grandma doesn't matter. That's why we don't see her much. Mom says she's old and can't help. That's not true, I said softly, sitting cross-legged on the carpet. I've always been here. Always. Lila crossed her arms. Mom says you spoil us. She says we're bad because you're soft. I nodded. I see what you're telling me. And I hear you. They looked at me, uncertain, as if testing whether my voice would break or my patience would vanish. It didn't. For a moment, silence filled the room, heavier than any words Brooke had thrown. I realized the kids weren't angry at me. They were repeating the scripts they'd been handed. I leaned in, voice calm. We're going to sort this together. I need you to tell me everything. Little by little, I won't be shocked, and I won't be angry. Noah hesitated, then whispered, we never knew anyone would actually listen. I felt a small surge of hope. The truth had begun to slip out piece by piece. And for the first time, I was ready to catch it all. I was in the kitchen when I found the first note, tucked inside Lila's backpack. A reminder from school, late pickup again, 3rd time this month. I held it in my hand longer than necessary, thinking about how many mornings I'd waited, watching the clock tick past 7 while the kids sat alone. Grandma Lila's voice pulled me back. She clutched a crumpled piece of paper. I wrote this. I knelt beside her. What is it, sweetheart? She handed it to me, in shaky pencil. It read, hate when Mommy yells. I hate it so much. My chest tightened. Not abuse in the criminal sense, but neglect. Emotional erosion, little by little. I started pulling things from their bags. From drawers I normally ignored notes from teachers. Reminders Brooke had ignored or dismissed. A string of text messages on Evan's tablet. Brooke's messages to someone named Chris. Vague but intimate. Plans for trips. Odd absences. References that didn't add up. Each note. Each text, each hidden message was a piece of evidence that could not be ignored, proof Brooke's neglect had tangible weight. I copied everything carefully, photographing receipts, scanning papers into a folder labeled Family Evidence. My hands shook only slightly, not with fear, but with anticipation. I called Mrs. Reynolds, a counselor I trusted who specialized in family dynamics and neglect. I need guidance. I said, not for the kids. They're fine, but for how to handle what I've found. Good. She said, you need a plan. Take it step by step, document, protect yourself and them. Don't confront her until you're ready. I hung up and exhaled slowly, looking at the pile of proof I'd gathered, each piece, small on its own, painted a picture of a household I had only glimpsed through fragments. Neglect, secrecy, distraction, emotional manipulation. The children moved around me, unaware of the weight of what I'd collected. They were laughing quietly over a game of cards, brief smiles breaking through weeks of tension. I realized then, seeing it all clearly meant I couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. Every letter, every note, every hidden message demanded action. And for the first time in years, I felt in control of the storm I'd only been weathering. By the next morning, the house felt different. The children moved with cautious curiosity instead of rebellion. Evan muttered, "Sorry for being rude yesterday," as he set the table. Lila handed me a folded napkin, saying, "I didn't mean to spill my juice." Noah, shy at first, smiled when I showed him how to fold his own laundry. I stayed calm, letting them see the consequences of small mistakes and the rewards of effort. Each apology, each careful action, chipped away at the tension Brooke had built around them. "Grandma, can I help with dinner?" Lila asked, glancing at me like she expected a refusal. "Of course," I said, handing her the cutting board. "You're part of this house now." Later, there was a knock. Daniel had stopped by after work, curious about how I'd been managing the kids while Brooke was away. "I thought I'd check in," he said, hesitating. I smiled. "Come in. Dinner's almost ready." He stepped inside, eyes scanning the room. The children laughed quietly as Evan poured juice. Lila stirred a pot, and Noah carried plates to the table. Daniel's jaw tightened. He hadn't seen this kind of calm since before Brooke moved in. "Willa," he started, voice low. "I didn't know it could be like this. I've been doing what I could," I said gently, "with them, without anyone's interference." He looked around again, realization softening the edges of his exhaustion. His denial cracked. For the first time in years, the truth settled into the room with us. It didn't shout or scream. It simply existed, quiet, undeniable. And in that quiet, I understood that healing could happen even when the person who caused the fracture was still absent. Brooke's messages arrived in bursts over the next few days. Pictures of beaches, cocktails, and her bright smile with a man she called Chris. None of it was about work. Not a single conference or seminar. Evan peeked at my phone. "Mom, she's having fun." I nodded slowly. "Yes, that's what it looks like." Later, there was a knock. Daniel had stopped by after work, curious about how I'd been managing the kids while Brooke was away. "No," I said gently. "He'll find out in time. For now, focus on your routines." I spread papers across the kitchen table, school notes, screenshots of messages, scribbled observations from the kids. Every detail Brooke had left behind, every hint she'd tried to hide, was laid bare. I sorted them carefully, labeling folders, photographing notes, making a plan. Daniel stopped by unexpectedly. He leaned against the doorway, watching the kids set the table for lunch. "Willa, this calm. I didn't think it was possible. I've had to learn it the hard way," I said, keeping my voice steady. "They need boundaries. And so do we." He glanced at the folders. "You've documented everything I have," I said, "every note, every message, so nothing surprises us." Noah tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma, are we ready for what I asked? To be done with her yelling and leaving?" I crouched beside him. "We're not done yet, but we're prepared. That counts for something." The afternoon passed in quiet organization, the house humming with routines I had set. Each detail, each small preparation, made the coming confrontation less frightening. I felt the weight of anticipation, but also a strange sense of control. When the last light faded outside, I sat back and breathed. Brooke was coming back soon, and for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. Brooke's car pulled up at noon, just as the clock ticked toward her expected drama. She stepped inside, confident, heels clicking across the hardwood like a judge entering her own courtroom. The house was calm. Evan, Lila, and Noah were sprawled across the living room, laughing over a board game, pencils and papers scattered but orderly. No chaos, no destruction. Brooke froze. Her mouth opened once, then closed. She looked from the children to me, then to Daniel standing behind me. His posture was firm, eyes steady. "Hi," I said. Voice light, almost casual. "Lunch is ready." Brooke's smile faltered. "Willa, what's going on?" "Just a regular day," I replied. "We've kept things quiet while you were away." She stepped closer, scanning the kitchen table. Folders and tablets lay in neat stacks. Screenshots, notes, school reports, every piece of evidence I'd quietly gathered. Her breath hitched. What is all this documentation?" I said calmly, "so we all know the truth." Evan glanced up. "Grandma made rules. We follow them. No phones until meals. Chores done. And we're happy." Lila added, "Mom, it's fine. We're fine." Brooke's eyes darted to Noah, whose small hand rested in mine. Her confidence slipped. She had expected resistance, rebellion, tears, maybe fear. Instead, the children ran toward me, laughing, trusting, unafraid. Daniel placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "She's been protecting all of us. Brooke, even you, in a way you don't understand." Her lips trembled. This isn't what I planned." I leaned back, letting the silence fill the space. She realized all at once that control wasn't hers anymore. Every manipulation, every threat, every lie she had built her life around crumbled in the quiet, steady reality before her. And in that pause, I knew the storm she expected had never arrived. The truth had arrived instead. Daniel sank into the sofa, exhaustion etched into his features. "Willa, I didn't see it before. The way you've handled everything." I poured him a cup of tea. "It's not about me anymore. It's about them. And about all of us finding a way forward." Evan slid a puzzle piece into place, grinning. "I like it when we all eat together. No phones." Lila set the table for dinner, careful, methodical. Brooke, she won't be yelling anymore, right?" I shook my head. "Not while I'm here." Noah tugged at my sleeve. "Can we read after dinner?" "Of course," I said, "but only if everyone helps clean up first." Daniel ran a hand over his face. "I called a counselor today. We need someone to guide us through this. Help me see what I missed." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's the right step. We all need guidance sometimes." A quiet determination settled over the house. The children moved confidently through chores and routines. Laughter replaced murmurs of fear. Even Brooke's occasional texts stopped, unanswered. Their power evaporated. I realized I hadn't felt this steady in years. The weight of obedience, manipulation, and doubt had lifted. I was present again, capable, seen. Evan nudged a book toward me. "Grandma, read us a chapter." I smiled. Opening the cover, of course. In that small circle, peace began to feel permanent. I had reclaimed my self-worth, and in doing so, I had protected them all. Protecting yourself was the first step to protecting those you love. I'd love to hear how you found your strength. Share your story in the comments below. And let's talk about the strength we find when we stand firm.